Welcome back, guys. Today we will discuss about reactive extension. You might be aware that when you access some of the controls, let's say a text field or a button or anything using RxSwift, you get these reactive extensions. Let's say uh, the control.rx.text, which gives you options to subscribe to the changes related to that. So is it even possible that we can do it in our custom controls? Or let's say if you are writing your own HTTP layer where you need to handle the responses reactively, is it even possible? Yes, it is. It is using reactive extension. So today's tutorial is based on that, where I'll create a custom control. That's a good beginning to have a look at how you can create a custom control and configure it using a view model, and then use reactive extensions to actually let any control or any owner of it, let's say if it's a view controller, it can listen to the changes which is happening to this particular control, if it is a UIControl. So that's pretty much the background, but for this project I'll be using one of the existing project which I had already worked on, which is based on design patterns using strategy pattern. So that is the tutorial I'll be picking up. So it's the same code base. If you're not looked at that, then you can refer back to one of the earlier episodes which I had done on design patterns, strategy pattern. So there we whatever the app is like, you have a set of options to choose a vehicle, and it will estimate you what is the duration required to reach a destination, or the fare associated with it, etc. Not really what happens there. It does not really calculate it. It just gives you some random numbers just for the sake of the tutorial. But in a real life scenario, those are the things you can do using strategy pattern. So without much ado, let me just start with this tutorial. So let's do, this is my project which I mentioned that it's already there. Let me just go to that folder so that I can include a pod there. So for that you just need to do pod in it. So I will receive a pod file. What I would like to include here is the RxSwift version, RxCocoa and RxSwift. So let me just grab that. So right now they are in version 4 plus. So I'm just using that here. So that's my Rx. Let me just install those pods now. Pod install. So that's done, which will generate a workspace. That's what we need to open. So workspace is this. So this is an already working project where I'll just show you what happens there. So if I run this, it's building the Rx dependencies, which is not, it was not needed in the tutorial which we did for strategy pattern. But whatever we are trying to do here is to get rid of the delegates which were defined there to receive the values. Let's say if it is based on the selection of a vehicle, those were getting received through this protocols. So that's what I was doing there. So I'm just running and showing you the app. So this was the app where there is a fare calculator, and based on the selection, it used to estimate different fares. This was using strategy where based on the selection, a base strategy is defined, and a derived strategy will actually calculate the fare for the specific selection made. So that was the whole app which was done. So this project code base is what we will format and modify and do the stuff which we require to actually create a extension, reactive extension. So let's do that. So for that, let's go first things first. Let's get rid of some of the things which are not required because we are introducing this. For that, this is what was a protocol which was defined earlier, vehicle selection delegate, which we will get rid of. Also, we had added different let me go to that control, vehicle options control. This was a custom control created at that point. So this custom control had 4 stack views embedded, which had this button and the title there. So we are going to get rid of this and create a custom control for these vehicle items. So this will become a custom control, and then just we can lay it out based on view model values, which we are going to do right now. So we did not have view model in this project, but we are going to create that so that we can enable Rx binding, etc. So let's create something called as a vehicle control right now. So it's a UI control which I am creating. Let me call it vehicle control. And also create the layout for it, the view file, having the same name. So that's my vehicle control. We just modify things here, free form, I don't need all this, and then just reduce it to a smaller size which will look like that individual controls. So that's the idea. Let me just grab the other one. So this looks like a stack view with size of 59 by 95. Maybe that's the same size for each and everything, 59 by 95. Maybe we don't bother, we will not really bother about that, because the stack view will actually decide what is the size needed. So let's just grab this and let me just include this inside, and let's add the constraint so that it's properly aligned. And let's set it to, that's getting better now, and even the top. So I guess it's okay, looks okay to me. This is +2, maybe make it 0. That's it. And because this is a control where I need to tap on it and it should respond back for the whole part of it. Let me add just one more button on top of it. So we already have this button here, which was actually receiving the callback, but because I can't really control how the image looks there, and let me just change it to an image view instead of this button. So this is my button. That's a button I have, and let me associate the base class to it. Vehicle control. Now I can access the control. Also, let me do the init. Okay, let me do the UI control. I have a custom set of snippet already to create it. These are the basic structure which is required to create a custom control. So instantiation using the same name, vehicle control, pass this basic stuff done. So that's my custom control, which is ready for use. Now it needs all the configurations required. So this is my part done, where I need to modify something here. Okay, let's work with the button a little further. So this button needs to have the whole space so that it can actually receive all the tap for the whole area. So that's my button. Let's get rid of the title, and have it spaced as per the size of this whole view. So that's done. We also it's 0, so it's aligned to the bottom. So that's done. This is my button right now, which I need to modify it to an image view. So let me just get rid of that. I don't need that button. I'll add a image view. So image view is coming inside the stack view. So that's done now. Have this, maybe I'll add a little bit height for that, 24 maybe. That's it. So image view is now stacked within the stack view, and stack view is filling proportionally, so I guess that will work. And scale to fill for this, let me make it aspect fit, so that based on the size of the image, if it is height based, it will just take the height, or if it is width based, it'll auto adjust without shrinking the image. That's the whole idea. So that's done now. So I have this control. Let me also add the outlets. So I don't have any outlets yet. So first outlet is for the image view vehicle. So this is where the icon will show up. This is my title, label title. And let me do one thing, because it needs to receive the tabs. Just let this button be on top of this, so that I can receive the button tab, and then I can just add it here. Button vehicle option, just call it button vehicle option. So that's pretty much my control. Now I need to start working on configuring this. Go here. So let's bring in the view model part. Before that, let me include whatever is needed, which is RxSwift is what I'll be using along with RxCocoa. That's done. Let me define the protocol which is required for the view model. Let me call it vehicle view model, view presentable. Normally this is one of the standards being followed now in the industry, where people have defined view models and its protocols being called as presentable. So I'm just using that. So this view model will also have a title. Let me also bring in, we have a title for that control, and we have a default image which is like a disabled image, and when you click on that item it gives you an active image. So for both of it, let me just define two image params. Let's see, UI image and get an active image, which is based on which control is, if the button is selected, the vehicle option is selected, it shows that specific button as active. That's all only idea. So I need one more thing to actually change these images, which I'll introduce a later point so that you don't get confused. That's one thing I'll do at later point. So class, let me do vehicle view model. So that's my view model, vehicle view presentable, which implements that. Now I can have the title, default image, and the active image. So these three things are done. So now at least my control is ready for configuration based on these view models. The whole idea of view model is to make UI decoupled from the app side, so that it becomes testable. That's the whole idea of having a view model. We have not done anything where any tutorial until now where I can show you how to test these view models, but we'll come to that at a later point when we are actually working on the Viper part. Let me just continue with this, where I have the configure, where I'll configure it with the view model. So view model will decide how the control needs to be configured. So it uses the protocol instead of the class, and Let me just have an instance of this view model here, and just self.viewModel will receive the view model. And also let's do a title. Anyway, this is something which is not going to change, so let's just do viewModel.title. So that's done. So now our view model at least will receive the control will receive the title from the view model. So we have the vehicle view model right now. Let's do something where we can inherit this and create specific implementations of view model. So I have 4 kind of things running here. Let's say bus is a type, taxi is a type, ferry is a type, train is a type. So let me just create those 4 types as view models. Bus view model is inheriting from the vehicle view model, and all I need to do is to override and then set the title, so that you don't need to do it anywhere else. That will be bus the title. The images we'll set it, so this will also ask for super.init. That's done. And default image which I'll use will be I already have it in the asset, so I'll just call it here. It's easier to add it in Swift these days. I just need to call, if it is bus, like this, and then it's associated. It's pretty cool, isn't it? I don't need to do anything more. So front bus active, so this is bus, so front bus and active. So these 2 icons will pop up, will be shown whenever I choose. Let's say if it is inactive, then it shows idle one. If it is active, then it shows the active one. So those 2 for the bus. Let's also create for taxi. This being taxi now, and this has to change where it's a car, front, it's car and car. Okay, so we have these 2 active things. Now let's define it for the ferry. We have 1 more to go, which is a train. Ferry is nothing but ship or boat or anything you can think of. So like boat or something. Okay, have it as boat, then boat. So I have these images set for this. Now finally train. So train, train idle and train active. So those are done. So this is a pretty good example of how to do inheritance in Swift, where I have this base class. We just call it as final, so that we don't need to anymore inherit from this. I guess we can, but then I'm just restricting it. So that's done. So those are the 4 types, and each control will get configured from the control where we are adding, which is the vehicle options control, which is having the stack view, where we will remove everything. So what I am going to remove, these 4 things are going to get customized based on the view model thing, which I'm right now removing. So this is where the array will get created of the view models, and it'll just configure those things. So let's go back to where we were, and I have set the title here, and I have the image not yet used. Let's go back and see when we need to do it. At that point we will do it. So right now let me just use this control and add it in the other control. So we have these view models right now ready. Let's go to the other one, which is where this view vehicle options control, where we will stack it, all those controls. So I'm going there, vehicle options control. Let me create. First thing first, let's get rid of, because I already got rid of these buttons. If you have seen, I just removed those from the stack view. I'm also removing it from here. I don't need this delegate anymore because I'll be depending on Rx. So as part of it, let's include Rx here as well. So those are done. And let's see where all dependency we still need to remove. So it was using a delegate call for these 4 on bus selected. This were coming from those controls. That control was having this vehicle selection delegate, which we were implementing to receive the callbacks, which we got rid of right now. So let's also get rid of all these button events, because we removed all the buttons right now. And all these go to deselect all, which was happening when you were selecting something, you had to deselect everything else. So those are gone now. So how are we going to receive the callbacks now, which is now interesting. So for that, let's also create the view model part for this. So let me just call it vehicle options view presentable. Again, the same type of approach, where I will have an vehicle options array, which is an array of vehicle view presentable. Pretty simple, isn't it? So class vehicle options view model is my view model for the whole control actually. So vehicle view presentable will implement this. No, vehicle options view presentable is implemented, and then I have it. I'll just initialize it with an array. So it will start, it can receive the vehicle view presentable type. It's already done here. So let's continue. So that's this view vehicle options view model is now created. So all that we need to do now is to create an instance here, let's say, and vehicle, just call it view model, because this is its base view model, and it's of this type. We can even create it as a type. So let's do that. So view model, and view model dot append vehicle options dot append will ask for a sequence of this, which we can actually, let's just keep it as lazy. Let we already have bus view model. Taxi view model. Then we have ferry. And finally train view model. So these 4, let's add it to this array. And ferry, train. So there is your view model. Then let's just return this view model. So that's my view model. So it's already configured with all the options, the vehicle options here, which will now be used by this control, the vehicle options control, to configure and then add those controls. So let's create a configure function. With the view model. So it's the vehicle options view model. Let's call the presenter, which is the presentable, which is the protocol. It's always good to go with the protocol, which is lightweight, which does not expose all the complexities related with this. So all that we need to, let's grab this. We already have it. So we already have this view model here, so it's easier now. So ViewModel dot vehicle options. Let's do vehicle vehicle. It's a vehicle view model is the option type. So using this, let's also create an array to hold the options, the controls, vehicle options, vehicle controls. We have 4 of it now, so all that we need to do is to add it here. So let's just create that vehicle control. So maybe that, and then vehicle control. Now we have already added a configure function to that, which will accept a vehicle view presentable, which you already have in this array. So vehicle view model, pass it, it configures it now, and then let's add it to this array. We have the vehicles control. What did we call it? Vehicle controls, and then append that vehicle control. And finally we need to grab okay, it's referring somewhere. Okay, before that let's just grab this stack view and create a outlet for that. That's my stack view container, let me call it. So we have this stack view where we will add these controls now. So vehicle options control, so that's my stack view container dot add to arrange subview vehicle control. So that's it. It will now add those controls, and one thing we need to do is to call this configure, otherwise it will not configure. Even we can have it as a private function and call it here so that it just auto configures. But even let's say if you are calling it, we don't have this anymore because we removed this delegate. Let's just keep this commented because we are going to move these estimate strategy somewhere else. So let's let it be there right now, and let me just configure this. Okay, we can't configure it outside because we already have it. Let's just configure the other place itself. So we now know we have these two. Let's just keep it private and call the configure here. I guess this will do. We already have the control, it gets configured, and let's see how it goes. Let's run and see once, because we have removed it and then we are now configuring it using the view models right now. So it should not show the images as it because I have not implemented that. So let's just run. Let's see, at least we'll see the titles without any events exposed for those controls. So you have these titles right now: bus, taxi, ferry, and train, which is getting configured using the view models. So that's pretty much working right now. Let's go back and continue working on whatever is left, which is to add whatever I said as creating something where we can subscribe and then add those subscriptions here. So let's go back to our vehicle control, add one in the view presentable, let's add a behavior. Okay, let's add something called as current image, which is like can be default or active. So based on the selection that we make, this will decide what needs to be shown. So let's let it be a behavior relay, which is something new introduced in RxSwift 4, because they RxSwift team itself is saying that they are deprecating variables which we always used in 3 and all. Instead of that, use behavior relay. I think it's coming along with RxCocoa. So this is what I am using these days. Nothing different. So it'll accept a UI image. Let me just keep it as optional, because initially when it is optional I can set it to a nil value. So that's my behavior relay. Now I need to implement this in the vehicle part, where I'll just instantiate the behavior relay with a nil value, so that initially if there is no value, I'll just set it to the default image. So that's the whole idea. So it's a behavior relay. Let me show you how to use it. So let me just go here in this control where we are configuring this view model part, where I'll just use this self dot view model dot. I already have this current image, which is a type behavior relay. All that I need to do here is to call a subscribe on next, which will give me an image of optional type. So that's the part which is important. And let me also add a dispose bag. And just call the dispose bag, which is pretty much to handle the disposing part of this delegate. So that's my current image dot subscribe. All that I need to do is, because it's a image is a nullable type, so I need to see whether it's nil or not. If it is nil, then I need to set the default image. So for that, subscribe, let me just add self dot so image view vehicle is where I'm setting the image. So I'll just call the view model dot default image here. So it will set the default image as the current image of the image vehicle. So that's done here. If it has an image, let's say, then I can always use the self dot image vehicle view dot image equal to view model dot, sorry, it's a image which I'm receiving. It's getting set from somewhere. That's the whole idea. So this getting set from somewhere is that I'll be doing when I actually complete the implementation of the reactive part. But right now, at least because there is no image set, it'll take the default image and show. So let's see. So for this to work, I think it will work right now, because we already have the implementation in place. So at least this part will work, where it will show the idle images where nothing is selected, that condition. So it shows it right now. So whenever we select, nothing is happening, because that's something we will implement right now. But basic structure is being built for this. So we are pretty much close to whatever we are trying to achieve here. The next step is to actually show how the reactive extension part is going to work, because we need to start sending signals from this case. So we have a button. So what do we do from here? So we have this button in this control, which is overlaid on top of it. On click of that, on tap of it, it needs to send a signal back saying this specific vehicle is being selected. So that's what we'll do right now. So let's do first thing, basic stuff. Button vehicle dot tap rx. This is what we are trying to do for the even this control, but at least in this case it will be self dot button dot tap dot. We'll just call the bind. Something is not correct. Okay, right, so dot button dot rx dot tap. Let's just handle this vehicle option event. It's not still objectives. I mean, the Xcode does not completely support showing code snippets for Rx part, so we'll have to rely on this at least where we grab this and use it. So we are using this button taps bind event to actually we will send a signal out from here. For that, let's define publish subject here, public relay I'll call it. So that is something like vehicle control tap. I'm just calling it vehicle control tap. Okay, maybe I'll just call it on vehicle chosen, which is of type publish relay, which is nothing but you can just imagine it as a delegate which can access a specific parameter. In this case, my parameter will be vehicle view presentable, which is my view model. So on tap, I need to send this view model back to a control which is actually holding this vehicle control. So that's the whole idea here. So let me just create a publish relay object, this specific type. That's created on vehicle chosen is available now. So all that I need to do is on this tab, I'll just call self dot on vehicle chosen dot accept. So all these relays are now coming with something called as accept, which will send out a signal using the view model which is chosen. So view model is nothing but this you can just call this self dot view model itself. So that's my view model which I'm sending. Also, let me just create the dispose part as well. So on button tab, whatever we are trying to do. So okay, so on button tab, vehicle options event, which is the tap event, I'm just binding it to the something like a delegate, which is like a publish subject, public relay, publish relay, and I'm accepting this view model. So once I do that, whoever is subscribed to will start receiving this value. So bind is done. Now the subscription part, where do I handle it? So that's where our extension is going to come into picture, where I'll use this to I'll use this on vehicle chosen observable to actually create an extension where I'll show you what's going to happen here. So extension, the reactive extension, where this is the whole the code or the snippet that we need to always include. It's like a repetitive thing. Whatever is your control needs to extend this reactive, where the base type is the type I'm chosen. In this case, it's my vehicle control, which requires this reactive extension. So I will be using so whatever variable that you are going to define right now is what will be accessed through your control.rx. That. So for this case, it will be vehicle control tap. Let me just call that, because that's a tap event of this specific whole control instead of the button. So that's what I am trying to send or extend as a reactive part here. So it should be of type control event, and whatever it needs to accept as parameter I'm expecting it to send is this vehicle view presentable itself. So that's the control event part. Now it needs to return a control event finally, which will accept a type of observable. So that's what I need. Let me just create that. Let observable is equal to, in this case whatever we need to access is through something called as base, which is nothing but our control, and our base control now has something is okay. Sometimes it's not working. So let's grab that. On vehicle chosen is our published subject. Let's make it as an observable and let's just pass it here. We don't need to do much more. We actually can do something like do, but we don't have anything to do here. But we can maybe keep the vehicle option view model. We don't have anything to do here at least, but I'll show you how to use that do, which is nothing but something post sending this observable. If you have to do some specific thing within this control, you can do that there. So do is here as observable do. So it's already sending this. I can just print something here. Vehicle chosen in reactive side, which I'm just printing. Vehicle option view model dot title, just printing that and showing that it is actually working. So we have this vehicle control tab reactive side exposed for this vehicle control. Now whatever is consuming it, in this case it is a vehicle options control, which is actually creating these controls. Here we can actually listen to those tab events, so it's easier, like it's as easy as, let's say, vehicle actions control. Now because it has Rx, we can just call vehicle chose and then subscribe to it, as simple as that. So now we will start listening to the tap events easily. So still we can do better because this is not the last, but I can also always show you what is happening here. Vehicle option view model. We'll remove this code, but I'm just showing you that it's actually working. I need to dispose back here as well. So rx dot control dot tab. So you already start receiving it here. You can just print and show vehicle option chosen in options control, just to segregate between this one, the other one. Vehicle option dot title. So now we are subscribing to all those tap events here. So now it should start working. Let's just click and see. The interesting part is the print right now. So you have two prints, one coming from the reactive part and one received here. So those two are now, it's ferry control, train, all these things are working. So we have at least identified or understood how to do the reactive extension to have the Rx part done, but still we are not yet there. There is something more which we can do. I don't need this here, but I can actually extend even this vehicle options control to send out whatever we have chosen right now, so that my view controller can act on these strategies. So that's what we will do right now. Let's get rid of this. Let's do the same thing we did there. Okay, not the whole thing. What did I do here? Okay, so let's get rid of this thing and extend this one. Extension of reactive here, where base is my, right now it is vehicle options control. This is what I am trying to extend. This control I am providing the Rx extension, which will listen to, let's say, whatever is received through that button click on those individual controls will be received here. and it will send out those view models. So let's do that. For this, again, let's call variable, let's vehicle option tab, just calling it vehicle option tab. It's again a control event which will similar to how it was doing earlier, which it will send out vehicle view presentable. So that's my control. Now it needs to return similar to the earlier one, control event and accept events. Let me just create that observable here. Let observable is equal to, what are we doing here? So we have these controls here. So first thing, we have the vehicle, we can access it through self.base. So always this control can access through self.base when you are actually creating the extension reactive. Still gives out error. And we have the vehicle controls, can just map it so that we can transform the on vehicle chosen. No, we have whatever we had was vehicle. Okay, we had the Rx extension. These are the individual controls which had the Rx extension, and each Rx had the vehicle control tab extension. Just call it as observable. So this is creating an observables array, because we have 4 controls, each of them have their own observables. So how can we make it as a single observable? For that, let's use observable. For that, we already know how to do that. If you have already seen an earlier tutorial, let's just merge it, pass the observable array, so which gives me this observable whole observable, which I can pass now to this. So that's how you create the observable. But we are not yet done. We have to do something more, where we can just flat map this and get the vehicle view presentable, vehicle view model, let's call it, and this will return me a type observable. Let's return a type of observable, and let's just return, this is one syntax to just return, just will return an observable of this type. So this gives out an observable. Why I did this is because I need to call this do to do something. So vehicle view model, let me just get rid of all the other things. So I have a do. So this part is already returning this observable for this control event. So that's fine right now, because I had merged this and then I did a flat map to get the vehicle view model, and then use the just to create an observable using this view model. That part is done, it returned this observable. But after that is where I need to start setting the active images. This is where I'll be doing it on the do part, where active image, if it already something is set, we will set it back to nil and then set the current one as the active image. For that, it's easy because we have the access to base and the view models, view model dot vehicle options. So I can loop through each vehicle view model option, and then I can just call vehicle view model dot current image dot accept. So in this case, because initially I can reset everything to the default image using, if I pass null, I already have in the observable, it identifies if the image is nil. If it is accepted as nil, then it will set the default image as the current image. So that part is done. So after everything is set to default image, we can just call this vehicle image view model dot same thing. Current image should be now the active image. So I can just call vehicle image view model dot active image, set that as the current image for the observable which is selected, the current one, so which we receive it here. So hope this makes sense. Like, we are sending out observable signals for the whole vehicle controls array together and passing it to an observable merge, which will just create one if you are subscribing to that observable.merge, you will start subscribing and receive the current selected observables values, which is a view model right now. So that we are using that view model to set its current image as the active image and resetting every other thing in the view models array to the default image. That's the whole thing we are doing here using this do. Otherwise, this flat map is already returning my the view model which is received. So so this part is done now. So we are pretty much good. Vehicle option tab as a reactive is exposed for vehicle options control. So that part is done. So where do we use it? Let's go back to the view controller. So we have the vehicle options control here already. All that we need to now do is to call the Rx dot vehicle option tab and then just subscribe to it. That's the whole thing we need to do. That's the only thing we need to do. Vehicle which sends out vehicle view model, actually the vehicle view presentable type. So that's what we are exposing there. Let's just import RxSwift here as well, Cocoa, and then let's create a dispose bag and call dispose by dispose bag. So this is done. So exciting part is coming up now where I have the subscriptions available. I'll just print even this one. Vehicle selection in view controller. So finally the selection will reach the view controller now. So we have the vehicle view model dot title again. Use that to show it whether we are receiving it. So we have set three things right now. We have created the reactive extension for the whole control, which is this one, where it lays out the controls required, 4 of it, the vehicle controls. On selection, now we are triggering the subscription which we exposed here using the Rx extension, reactive extension, and we just collated every control and then created this. And also we are doing this do on the current view model, so that we can reset the current images which is active or the default ones. So let's just run and see. We should see this print. After that we will go with the final strategy implementation, which is right now commented out. So we can see that these things are ready. Clicking on it, so it's working. Let's see whether it's received. Yes, vehicle selection in view controller, bus is received, and it's resetting all the other ones pretty neatly. And each and every tap we are receiving an observable that's specific, because we merged all the observables. Finally view controller is receiving the currently selected one. Pretty good, isn't it? How much code we reduced. Now is the part where we will move this strategy out. What all things we need to remove? These selections are actually sending us a specific strategy. So how can we change this? Let's get rid of this. Is no more there. On bus selected, on taxi selected, on ferry selected. Let's get rid of this. Let's just keep the estimate, update estimates, which is actually accepting an estimate strategy. So how do we do that? You can do it in this subscription itself. So for that, let's just create let's go to that specific strategy. Let's just create something like a plain simple strategy factory, estimate factory. Let's call it estimate factory, nothing more. I'm just trying to make it get strategy. All that you need to pass here is the view model, which is vehicle view model, vehicle view presentable, passing the protocol type. And then let's write a switch here, switch statement, case being the view model. So view model types, let's view vehicle view presentable can be a bus view model, case is bus view model. Then if that's the case, we'll just return, we already have the strategy, so let's just bus strategy estimate strategy dot shared instance. So we need to return the type estimate strategy protocol here. Let's just return base type as a taxi estimate strategy dot shared instance. Let's also grab the other cases. So we have bus, then we have taxi, so that will be taxi strategy if it is taxi. Then we have ferry, if it is ferry view model, we'll send ferry strategy. If it is train, we'll send train strategy. So this part we can keep extending based on, this is the only place where the strategy will get extended and added. Let's call it static. So this is where you'll get all the strategies. So with this in place, let's just call this plain simple strategy. Whatever it accepts is the view models, which we already know what it is. So it returns you the view model. For that, we already have an estimate strategy instance or parameter already defined here, which will accept this. So we just call it weak self. Also do a guard for the weak type. So self.estimate strategy is accepting, it's using plain simple estimate factory to get the strategy. Once you pass that, you get the estimate. And now all that you need to do is call the update estimates here. Update estimates is accepting a strategy, so pass the estimate strategy. So we just moved the whole code to some other place, a factory, and just simplified this whole thing. We don't have any other code here other than something which uses this view model to get the estimate strategy. So much of simplified code. The whole idea was to show how to create the vehicle options or the reactive part of how to create. If you have a custom control, it's pretty easy to actually expose reactive components. You can just use the reactive extension and just create a variable which is something like this, which you can accept and then subscribe to the changes. Let's see whether this is working or not, because it needs to now estimate, update the estimates. So pretty cool, isn't it? Even this is working now pretty fine. Ferry charges, train, taxi. So strategy is also working now. We have implemented the extension, reactive extensions for this control, and you also understood now how to what is the purpose of having a do as well. And that's pretty much what I wanted to talk today, and make a tutorial on how to use the reactive extension. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave your feedback, comments in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel. I guess there is a bell button or something which every channel says that you need to click on it. If it is there, please click on it so that you get updates. And watch out for the upcoming tutorials, which are pretty interesting, which are lined up. I'll keep posting on what is there in the future, and then let's hope for some stuff, fun stuff in the future. So until then, bye from me.